stars aligning 'cause we're gifted. 'Cause I come alive. In the nighttime, it's the right time to be free. Join me. 'Cause I come alive. In the nighttime, it's the right time to be free. Join me, join me.
Welcome to the Simple Questions Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Carnahan. That was Join Me by Jazlyn. That is spelled Jazlyn. Jazlyn is a 24-year-old R&B singer, songwriter, and actress born in Springfield, Missouri, and she has lived in Kansas City for the last 6 years. Getting her bachelor's in musical theater, Jazlyn has always known music was the missing piece to her heart. Her biggest inspirations are Prince, Aaliyah, and Chris Brown. Recently, she performed at Made Mob's First Friday event. You can find her music on all major platforms under Jazlyn, and follow her on social media under Jazlyn Epps, EPPS, Jazlyn Epps, for updates on all upcoming performances and singles. The question for this episode is, how do you start a podcast? A few things that you'll learn in this episode are the early obstacles all podcasters face, the reasons you should and shouldn't start a podcast, and tips on how to get guests on your podcast. Our guest is the host of Neandertalk Podcast, where they've recorded over 150 podcast episodes and been named the best local podcast of 2021 by Kansas City Magazine. I introduce to you Ryan Westa. Three, two, one. You see what I did there? I took that from you.
It's in 3, 2, 1. Yes, nice. Yeah. I appreciate that. Nice. I thought that's what you did, but you got to keep going. You got to go in 3, 2, 1. What's up? Welcome, guys. This is Dylan. Welcome to. You got to flow with it, or else you just leave it there, leave it hanging.
Yeah, I did. Well, you did perfect it. So that is
Thank you for noticing, by the way. That's cool.
I had to do a little bit of research, right?
Nice. I never do.
You never do any research?
Almost never. Like my research is very basic. I just talk to people that I think that I would like to talk to. But then I don't want to do too much research because I like to be surprised about their story or different talents they have, or just, I don't know. I like to be surprised. I like to pull things out of people. I like it to be more organic. And if I feel like if I start researching people, I might get on a certain topic. I don't know. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to do research.
Yeah.
It might benefit me to do research, but just as long as I've been doing this, I just do very basic, like, I like this rapper. I really like his music. I want him on. I just want to kick it with him. Like, I want this dude to be my friend. Like, that's how I look at it. Like, I just, I don't know. I'm different, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there is an aspect of that with, you don't want it like too choreographed. And like you said, I mean, you want it kind of be a mystery. If I knew everything about you verbatim, and we were this conversation would be pretty boring for me, right? And for you as well.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I keep things fresh. I'll keep you on your toes. I tell you what, if you listen to every single one of my podcasts, you'll know me inside and out. I've been doing this for, I don't know, 3.5 years. And I just have so many in-depth conversations with people that I pull a lot of emotion and stuff out of people. In turn, I'm also opening up a whole lot and putting myself out there. And it's weird. It's like, I'm private, but I'm not. Like, if you just listen and man, there's people out there that like know me. Scary.
Yeah, there definitely is an exchange in talking to people too. There's a transaction going there emotionally. Now, 3 years ago, what does Ryan think of podcasting and how does he get into it?
Well, I'll save all the personal stuff on why I got into it, but ultimately I just wanted to do it. And how did I start it? That is a very interesting question with a lot of different answers. So what kind of answer do you want? Do you want technical? Do you want
I want
All right,
authentic. I want.
I know I can go. Why did I start? How did I start? How did I start it 3 years ago? How did I start?
Yeah.
All right, man. I had a friend. Okay. I had a do you have a time limit on your podcast? Is it cool if we just rap like
Let's say 7 minutes. I'll give you 7 minutes.
7 minutes? All right, there we go. Okay. So I wanted to start a podcast. I had this friend. He is legitimately crazy, like bipolar, crazy depression, Dunning-Kruger syndrome, like just he's been in prison, he's been in Mexican prison and then shipped back here, like a real wild dude. And he was like a really good friend of mine. And I was going through a hard time in my life. And he was like, man, I want to help you get out of this. And he would have money, like come into money sometimes. Like he was roller coaster with money, just like, okay, but he's a crazy dude. He gets a lot of money with however he does it. And he's like, I want to help you build your dream, your podcast dream. He knew my dream was to start a podcast.
Okay.
I was like, all right. And then, so he kind of was like, let's do this. And we started Googling YouTube. Basically that's it. YouTube, how to start a podcast. And I had this vision in my mind on how I wanted my studio to look. Joe Rogan's a big influence of mine. I've been listening to his podcast since it first started. And his second studio is, I really liked the vibe of it. So I kind of wanted to create a vibe like that. And I just YouTubed how to start a podcast. And you just start there, go there, and then you go, which mics do I want? Then you got to research what your budget fits for what kind of microphones you want and how big and deep you want to go in this podcast. And I wanted to go pretty deep. And so we spent a lot of money to build this nice studio, and it was all YouTube. And here's the funny thing. So once you do that, you buy all the stuff you think you need. That's great. I had it all in my studio. And then I was like, I don't know how any of this works. I'm not a technical dude. I don't know anything. Like,
you got all the gadgets, but
I got everything. And like, I got an iMac, and I didn't even know how to turn it on. So then I had everything going. I was ready to start the podcast. So then I had to start a whole nother like YouTube rabbit hole of how to put all this stuff together. And so I spent months researching everything I got like almost a community college degrees worth of like engineering, you know what I mean? Or not engineering, but audio engineering. So there's no easy answer, but there are ways to start this podcast if you want, cheaper and easier. But I wanted to do it right,
You took a dive in the deep end, and then you had to backtrack by going to the shallow end on YouTube and figuring out how to start at iMac.
Yep. Well, I figured that out. I did find the button eventually. I was like, there's got to be a button on here somewhere. I was like, oh, wait, there it is. Yep. And it was, it's been a journey. I mean, that is just like the Cliff Notes, quick hit version of it. But that story, I should really go. I haven't done like a full deep dive into that whole story because it really is a nutty story.
Yeah. There's more to that for sure.
There's more to that. And that guy has been on the podcast. He was on episode 1.
Okay.
And then episode, I think like 34 or something like that. It's Como Barrio, fresh out of jail. He had gotten arrested in Mexico by the federales, and then they held him in Mexican prison for a couple months, holding them there till they could transport him up to the States to prison. And then he got off because of some, I don't know, some
technicality or something.
Yeah, some kind of weird technicality. And for honestly, what they were busting him with, it was garbage. And then he got out, and then he's like, "Hey man, I just got out. Let's do
episode
a podcast." 34 or something like that. Yeah, it's Como Barrio, fresh out of jail. And you'll see how crazy I mean, you'll see him. He's a character. You know what I mean? He's a character.
How have things evolved from kind of that episode 1, episode 34 to your 160 around there?
Close to, I'm something like that, like
Yeah.
158 or something like that. How has it evolved?
Yeah.
Everything technically and all that stuff's been pretty much the same.
Okay.
But I've grown. As first you start finding your voice. It takes a while to, as funny as that sounds, to like find your voice, how to interact with people, how to use the mic, how to sound. I don't know, just be comfortable in front of a mic. I think that's what that means.
In terms of a technical aspect, or is this like personality?
Not personality, just getting comfortable talking on a microphone. Like, you go take anybody off the street and say, "Hey, start a podcast and start talking in this microphone."
It's gonna be weird.
I mean, yeah. I mean, listen. I mean, so you have to. Yeah, there is just. It's like doing anything with practice. You become better at it, and talking's no different. And when you're talking to other people, I don't know. There's just. I don't know how else to put it. You guys got to find your voice. You got to get comfortable with being on a mic. A lot of people don't like their voice, and you got to get comfortable with that too.
You bring up the point, you can't take some average Joe off the street, because you and I, we're crazy sophisticated, but you can't just take.
You might be. I'm not. No. It's called Neandertalk Podcast. I'm a Neanderthal. I'm just a dumb caveman. Far from sophisticated.
When you give someone a microphone, yeah, it is a little more complicated. I will say a trick that I used is I'm pretty big into video games.
Oh, nice. Me too.
When I play video games, I use the podcast mic.
Okay.
That gets me comfortable. I'm like, hey, search and destroy Call of Duty.
Mm-hmm.
Third round, we're rushing B. And hey, it kind of gets that nuance of talking in a microphone out of the way pretty quick if you do play.
That's a good point. Even then, take some of those gamers. I play with a lot of gamers. You want to hear some of those Xbox kids on here trying to get them in front of a mic for a while when they have to be, talk to somebody.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, there's a muscle you got to learn. If you want to podcast, you have to want to podcast. And I think that kind of personality already has something in them that will allow them to get to that voice. Like if you want a podcast, you're going to have to get comfortable with your voice. So I think, I don't know where I'm going.
Yeah. If you have the desire to make a podcast, you inherently have some quality you'd hope that would help you with your podcast.
Yeah.
Now it seems like you interview people quite a bit. Like that's the.
I hate the word interview, but
converse.
It's not, because I'm not interviewing these people. I'm having them in and we're just kicking it and having long form conversation. Like I think an interview is more like having a certain amount of questions or like just, for lack of a better word, I guess interview, but I don't like calling that. That's not what my podcast is. I have all kinds of people on that I'm interested in talking to, but I don't like calling it an interview because that sounds like it's me asking all the questions. Like I'm going to ask you everything and then you're going to bounce and you're just going to answer them. That's not what I do. I want my guests to ask me questions. Like we get into talk, we'll tell stories. You know what I mean? It's just, I'll have comics on and we just get goofy. I'm getting drunk with other podcasters. Like it's just not an interview. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No. It's more of that goes back to that like transaction we talked about kind of earlier. It's a little bit less straightforward than hey, like set specific, more free.
And there's nothing, and I'm not disparaging people that do that type of podcast or style. Interviews are great. I like them, but it's just I don't know. I'm just not built like that. My mind doesn't think like that. I don't know.
The people you have talked to kind of, was that, like I said, like you've mentioned, was that kind of the catalyst? You're like, hey, I just want to kick it. I want to talk to so-and-so. And that's kind of the kernel, I guess, you build everything around?
Yeah, for the most part. I want to talk to interesting people. I want to talk to smart people, funny people. I don't want to just talk to random people. And I think that's something that it's hard to get people interested in that sometimes if they just see let me see Brandon Pat. I got a picture of Brandon Patrick right here. He's a Kansas a stand-up comedian, hilarious.
Okay.
But if you see on like, oh, Brandon Patrick, or I have oh my gosh, just whatever the names I have, they're not famous people. People don't know them, and they just think, oh, who is this person? But I get people that are really exceptional human beings, because I've been learning that, like, there's just a lot of exceptional human beings out there that a lot of people just don't know about because they're just not famous for whatever reason, or they're not good at marketing. Like, I think that's a lot of what comes with these people that are famous, is they're just good at marketing. You look at some of these podcasts that are getting these awards or nominated for awards, and it's like, it's all just marketing. It's like, how, like, I don't know. It's just, you gotta be good at certain different things to become somebody. I don't know. I went off on a couple different branches there. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. There is an aspect, like, you bring up marketing, like, it's true. Like, some people aren't necessarily familiar with how to market themselves using the internet.
Yeah, that's me. I don't know how to market at all. That's my biggest issue. I know how to podcast. I'm good at podcasting.
Yeah.
That's it. Anything else, pimping myself, marketing, I don't know how to do that.
So how do you find these people? How do you find them? I mean, because you're saying, like, hey, I don't know them based upon name recognition. So how are you coming across these people?
Usually, I would say a good 80% of them are probably from Instagram.
Really?
I just find really cool people on Instagram. I like what they're doing. Some is just music. I listen to a lot of local hip hop. I've always liked hip hop, and I've really fallen in love with the Kansas City music scene. And so I reach out to the people I like, the musicians I like, or topics like, I don't know. I was into cryotherapy for a while. So I was like, oh, I want to learn about this. So I found a cryotherapy guy. I just find things that I'm interested in. I'm interested in so many different things. Artists are really cool people. Like, if there's a cool mural, I'll see who did that, maybe talk to them. Well, I'm really drawing some blanks. I've had so many, it's hard to pinpoint.
Yeah.
Because I've had over 150 different guests. So it's hard to, I don't know, just my brain's racked right now. If I could look at my guests, but oh yeah. Like, other podcasters are really fun. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just find, and then I found them on like, so Bumble has, Bumble, the dating app.
Yeah. There's like a business or friends version. I know that.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's the Bumble business. I've gotten some off there.
How did you get it on that? You're like,
on Bumble?
On Bumble Business. How?
Come on now. Holler at your boy. Single, ready to mingle. Come on. Ladies out there, Neandertalk Podcast at gmail.com. Neandertalk Pod on Instagram. Slide in these sweet DMs.
Yeah. That was good.
Yeah. So that's how, and I was like, oh, what's this business? Let me go on there.
Let's kind of go say, man, I like what Ryan and Dylan are talking about. I like talking to cool people. I think that's what my podcast is going to be about. I think I'm going to be talking to people that I think were interesting. Step one, you got your premise. Let's not go any further than, say, talking to cool people. How are you choosing your name, and how are you getting a logo? Like, you just give up at that point?
To come up with a name?
Yeah.
Did I give up?
No, I'm saying, like, you're like, is that a lot of work? Like, how much work are we talking?
Coming up with a name and a logo?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good story. I came up with the name meditating once, and I came up with two different names. One I'm really glad I didn't go with. It was very pretentious. It was going to be called the conscious conscious plateau, something stupid like that. And I don't know. I don't know. One day it was like, I'm a dumb caveman that wants to talk. And I was like, it just came to me. I don't know how to tell you. I was just meditating one day and it just came to me, Neandertalk, like Neanderthal with talk. Like that's,
boom.
Boom. And there was you know what? That's funny. I was dating a girl at the time. And I believe I met her on Bumble.
Dude, so you're telling me Bumble has its hands all over the formation of this podcast?
You have actually, you know what? It really does. Dating apps, Bumble. You have no idea. I really do need I'm glad I'm having this conversation with you. It's just bringing out a lot of stuff that I need to bring up on a podcast of my own. So I told her the name of it and I was like, but I need a logo. What do I do? I go, here's kind of my idea. And I had sent her a picture.
You're telling me this Bumble girl is helping with this logo too?
Yes.
All right.
Yes,
just to clarify.
Yes. Yep. And I had sent, we were dating, so we sent each other pictures from time to time. And she had one of me that she really liked of my logo, that face that I'm making.
Yeah.
And she sent, I just sent her that one day and she sent that back to me with like a red filter over it type thing. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I was like, inspired heavily by Rogan, and I liked his logo. I wanted something similar to that, just like the circle type thing, because it goes good with logo placements on computers.
Yeah, those like avatar pics.
Yeah, it's a perfect avatar pic. So, and I was like, I like that. And then I just did like a shitty phone edit and put text over that, Neandertalk podcast or something. I was like, And then I know my sister was going to college at the time and she's good on Photoshop. And so I just hit her up. I was like, hey, can you do something like this? Here's my idea. I just told her my idea for the logo. She worked on it. A day or two later, sent it back. I was like, oh my gosh, that is perfect. I love it. I absolutely love it. And I still love it. I've had, people on Instagram hit me up all the time. Oh, I can make your new logo, blah, blah. I was like, get the hell out of here. I love my logo.
Stop it.
Yeah. So that's that story.
Yeah. That's interesting that like the formation of your name. I know personally, I had a very similar experience. I was watching Midnight Gospel, which is a animated podcast on Netflix. And I was watching this. It's really like eye wash. It's like super cool looking, but it's just a podcast that's been animated. And I was watching that, and I went to bed, and I woke up, and I was like, "Man, I'm thirsty." And I go to get water. I'm drinking it, and I just kind of come up. Well, I'm like, "Well, what if I had a podcast?" And what would it be? And then I'm like, "Well, I'd ask people simple questions." And I'm like, "Well, what would you call that?" It's like, Simple Questions Podcast. and that was really it. And it's just interesting how you can it was really abstract, how that happened. It wasn't,
just came to you.
Yeah.
It's like a gift. I mean, I look at things like that as like a gift from the universe. Like, I think, you can go way back to however long creative people have been coming up, and, they used to call that the muse, if you will, but the universe just gives us little gifts like this, and they're out there all the time. You just got to recognize them and seize them and grab them when you can. That's nice. You caught it. You caught it, man. Nice job.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. And then I think the logo was a more formulaic route. I'll say worked at a craft brewery. First episode, shout out to Red Crow Brewing Company. Chris and Misty, if you're listening. And the guy who did their logo, I'm like, hey, who did your logo?
Nice.
And he did my logo.
Nice.
Very complicated stuff there. I will say and I do have like some Photoshop ability. Wasn't proficient enough, I felt like, to make a logo how I had wanted. I will say that a good place to start for stuff like that, if you're just like completely bewildered by the idea of starting a logo, is Fiverr.
Yeah, I would suggest the same thing for sure.
Yeah. Like Fiverr is ridiculous. You can find
Hmm.
people just grinding, making hella good content, whatever it may be. In this particular instance, like a logo. There are some very talented individuals on that platform.
Yeah, and you can get them for cheap. And another route too would be just use your social media. Put a question out there. Hey, does anybody do Photoshop? Does anybody make logos? I'm coming up with a podcast. Here's the name. If you could help me out, hit me up. Like that's, don't be afraid to use all your platforms out there too for looking for help. I do that too for guests too. I'll throw them out. I throw it out there all the time. Like, hey, got any guest suggestions, or does anybody want to be a guest, or blah blah.
Yeah. I think a lot of that stuff you'd be, and this is just like for anyone, you would be amazed at the response you would get from people if you simply aren't afraid to ask.
Oh yeah, that was my
It's crazy.
yeah, that was my what do you call that, strategy in the beginning. I mean, it still is. You just have to ask. I started out with, I had the idea. You're talking about guests, or how did I get guests? Well, when I first started, I had all these ideas. I want to talk to this kind of person, that kind of person. But in reality, I had like 6 or 7 people I could draw from. Didn't have an Instagram yet. I
Your
just didn't
network.
have, yeah, I had nothing. But in my mind, I've got all these great ideas. And then so I just started asking some of my friends that I knew would be interesting to talk to, or I could get some content, or just the ball rolling. You got to get the ball
Mhm.
rolling somehow. And then you have to be bold. You have to step outside yourself. You have to, like one of my first guests that I got, check this out. I was on a Bumble date with a different girl. And so we went on a coffee date downtown, and then in Crossroads at Messenger Cafe. And then afterwards, we're like, oh, let's go walk and check some graffiti out. Well, we go down. Have you been down the Crossroads where all the
Yeah.
graffiti's at? We go down and we're like, I smell paint. They must have just painted last night. This will be cool.
Uh-huh.
And we walk down, and then we hear some music bumping. And there's a hatchback with its doors open, and there's 2 dudes with like 50 spray cans, and they're just tagging, just doing cool, badass art. And I hit them up, and I'm just chatting with them. I'm like, oh, I need podcast guests. I want to talk to a graffiti artist. And then, so, I just met this dude in the street. I was like, and he came on, and then I networked with him, and you never know who you're going to meet. Just you got to ask people. I've asked bartenders. I've been out, I've handed my my podcast business card out to different people, and I don't know. You just got to get yourself out there and ask everybody that you want. Like you were saying, yeah, you just have to ask.
Yeah, you gotta. It's that. I think that's a big thing. It's just simply even. Here's the thing: there are ways to increase your success rate on asking someone. Like being nice, or simple stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But by and large, I think advice would be just simply just start asking. Like you talk about talking to your friends. You go, hey, I got like 7 people I can talk to. I know. So to date, this would be my 9th episode. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
9th episode. The first people I interviewed, I had mentioned this earlier, I worked for them at that craft brewery.
Mm-hmm.
Next, a guy that worked with my brother, Lieutenant Tyson Kilby. After that, a guy that was my mentor that I was his mentee. I played baseball. And so that, like, for instance, like this story, Buddy Biancalana, he worked with my team, and I just asked my head coach, like, hey, can I have Buddy's number and, talk to him about something? And so I had to ask him, right?
Right.
Which is uncomfortable.
Right.
And then
yeah.
And then he like sent a group text like, hey, here's hey buddy, here's Dylan.
Oh, nice.
And then he got to talk to him, right? And Lemony Snicket series of asking people uncomfortable questions. And that's the key. You got to be comfortable being uncomfortable to a certain degree. And it's really not that crazy. It's really not.
It's usually just an email or an instant message, a DM. and you'd be surprised. I mean, who doesn't want to be on a podcast? I've been turned down very few times. I've been turned down, but it's not as often. It's not very often. It's people want to do a podcast, especially if you've been doing it for a little bit, or it looks good or sounds good. As long as it looks kind of professional, they'll say yes to a lot of things. I'll have so many people come in here and be like, "Oh, can I cuss on your podcast?" I'm like, "You have not done your research." Yeah. Like, yeah. And I don't know. It's funny. Just ask people, and a lot of times they'll do it.
Yeah. I mean, you have a platform and everyone's slightly narcissistic.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Everybody wants to. Yeah. And I've talked to some, a couple people that were probably, I don't know. I was surprised as they said yes. They were kind of not big names, but, kind of, at least to me, like, if people know this person, a lot of people, you know what I mean? Like, there's a few people I'm like, whoa, they got a blue check mark. I had one guy that was on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Yeah. Like,
so it's
that is crazy. I know.
I've had a guy that's done a TED Talk. I've had a best-selling author, like huge, big name author. Like it's
And you sat down and talked with them. Like how cool is that, right?
Oh my gosh, the bigger ones. They're usually like the author was in Vancouver. The guy that was on Rogan's show was in like Milwaukee or like this. So they were over Zoom.
Uh-huh.
I prefer to do in person, but it is cool to get those people too that you really respect and look up to, like right across the seat, like right across the table from me. I get to hang out with them. It's awesome. And then I've, like one of my favorite rappers is now one of my best friends. It's amazing.
What would be your advice on reaching out to people like that?
Just do it. Just DM them, Instagram them. I like I said, I prefer Instagram. And just DM them. Hey, my name's Ryan. I host Neandertalk Podcast. If you got some accolades, you can throw that on there.
Yeah.
And just be like, hey, I'd love to talk to you. I really love your music. I really love your stand-up. I love your books. I love your movies. I'm really curious to learn about your opinion on this or that. I heard you on this podcast or whatever. Just, feed their ego a little bit, but it's not really feeding them. I mean, if it's something you're really genuinely interested in, they're going to feel it, and then they're going to come in, they're going to want to talk to you. Like if you're interested in somebody, convey that. You got to convey that, and you got to put initiative, and you got to be, you're saying not be nice. You got to be nice, but not just that, but be professional a little bit. Just, know your crowd, know your audience.
Yeah. Well,
just reach out, just do it.
Well said. Well said. Just do it. Yeah. 100%. I think, like for anyone listening, like you're over here like, hey, this person's cool. And same here. And you send them a message on social media. Like that's the barrier to entry we're talking about. Like, out of all the things, whatever, like think, it's pretty low. It's pretty low.
Yeah. And it's just a DM. The person can read it and not even let you know that they read it if they're not that interested.
Yeah.
It's not that, you're not out anything, and you're just a profile to them. You're not even a real person to them yet.
Yeah. They don't have that connection. You're just another Bumble pick.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe 6 or 7 picks, a couple thirst traps on there,
You're okay. You booked someone, right? You got someone's like, hey, Ryan, sounds sweet. 9 a.m. Sunday. Let's do this.
Let's do it.
And then you go, holy cow, I don't have any equipment. I have none. What equipment do you need?
Okay. Depends on how much money you want to spend. Depends on how deep you want to go. Depends on the level of your seriousness. If you want to be super serious, you spend, you're going to have to spend a couple $1,000s at least. Yeah, at least 15. If you want to, like, I don't know. Podcasts are to me, it's all about the quality of audio. So you just got to spend a little bit of money. You can get away with $1,000 for a really good setup. Get yourself a Zoom H6 and then a couple good mics and some cords. And maybe even cheaper than that if you don't want to. You know what? I take that back. You can get it. You can get invested. You can get good quality for fairly cheap for $500 or $600. I bet get a used Zoom H6 and 2 microphones. I got Audio Technica AT 2020s, I think they're called. Probably $80 a piece. XLR cords are maybe $20 a piece. So you're looking at $100 per mic. And then your Zoom H6 is going to be a couple $100. 1, 2, 3. So $500 you can have a professionally quality setup for two people. Now, if you want to step it up, you can add video or add nicer mics or this, that, and the other, headphones and mixers and this and that and the other. But if you want to go cheaper, there's an app called Anchor.fm. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, that's my platform. That's what
they do free podcasting on there, and you can use your iPhone. You can just record on your iPhone and upload it through that. You're not going to get the best audio quality out of that, but it'll get you in the door.
You're putting out content.
You're getting comfortable with doing it, but it's just, don't ask me to be on your podcast if that's your setup. Like, I'm picky. Like, I listened to your podcast before I agreed. Like, I read your message. I was like, let me check. And I was like, okay, it sounds professional. It's good quality. I'll do that. But if it's like some garbage, I'm not going to be associated with that. So, and then from there, if you have just a computer, you can get a cheap mic, like a USB mic for like $50 or $60. But then again,
the Blue Yeti.
Yeah. Yep. A Blue Yeti, $80 or something like that. The Snowball, it's like 40 or 50. But yeah, just spend it. Just invest in yourself. That's what I would say. Because if you invest in yourself, say you spend $1,000, that's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of money. A lot of people don't have just $1,000 to blow on a hobby. But if you have if you can just work a little extra overtime or pick up another job for a couple months and just do that, that's going to kick you in the ass. So you get even more motivated. Like, I just spent $1,000. I have to do this. I have to reach out to guests. I have to put content out. I got aggressive with it. That was kind of my mistake. When I first started my podcast, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have all these people. I'm going to do it once a week. Wow. I've been doing it, but that was such a stupid mistake. And now I'm like stuck doing it once. I mean, I love it, but it's a grind. It is a grind to do it every week. And I mean, it's a good grind, fun grind, but when you spend that kind of money, you're going to invest in yourself. And so if you just got to invest in yourself and believe in yourself, put that $1,000 down, get a dope little setup and do it. If that's what you really want to do. And if worse comes to worse, sell it on eBay and take a loss.
Go on Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
What you brought up the H6. What is the H6? Is that an interface? Is that
that is a podcasting audio mixer. Like it's probably it's one of the best things that podcasters use. So your microphone. So I use XLR mics. I think you do too, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and I have that connected to, it's called an H6. So those go to that. I can take this anywhere I want. It can be portable. You can put batteries in it, and I can take these microphones and my H6 anywhere and do a remote podcast with it and get audio. It'll sound just this good. And that's it. It's got a mixer. It's got little dials on it, and it's got different channels. It's got like 4 channels, and it just makes it sound professional wherever you go. Like how my podcast sounds in my studio, it'll sound just like that anywhere. Cause it's like a little podcast machine. And then I have that, and that will record everything on an SD card.
Okay.
And then you can put that in your computer. I have it hooked up directly to my computer. So it just records everything on my Mac, but you don't have to go that deep if you don't want to. And then also what you could do, this actually isn't bad. If you want to save even a couple $100 more, get just the H6, and it comes with one microphone attached to it. And you can do, the quality on that's pretty good. I don't know, there's an idea too. Get your H6 with the microphone on top of it and record great audio with that to your SD card.
What?
Yeah, there's so many options for podcasting. It's crazy. That's why you got to just do a little bit of research and figure out what works best for your budget. Come up with your budget first and then figure it out.
Use the budget to pick
to get what you want. But and like I said, invest in yourself. Spend something that's uncomfortable to you, something that's going to hurt your wallet a little bit. Like shit, put yourself behind the eight ball a little bit and make your ass work for it. It's a strategy. People, I don't know. It's difficult. It's difficult, but difficult things come with rewards. And if you can get past that, and you will, it's just you just invest in yourself. Number one piece of advice.
Yeah, I would say if you're really serious about it, it's akin to like investing yourself via education. I mean, that's investing yourself going to school. If you're really wanting a podcast, the similar thing would be to invest in the equipment to do so.
And also, I mean, there's so much that comes along with starting a podcast. It sounds great, but you got to be honest with yourself, and you have to be honest with yourself on why you want to do the podcast in the first place. Do you want to do it to make money? Do you want to do it to be famous? Like, what's your goal? You better not want to make money, and you better not want to be famous. Like everyone's got a damn podcast. Everyone has a podcast. It's crazy, and it's fine. It's fun. But it is very hard to make money, and it's very hard. You have to be passionate, and you have to do it because you want to do it. It can't be vain. It can't be just, oh, I'm going to make money, a quick buck. Like that's very, you got to catch lightning in a bottle for that. I'm not saying it can't be done, but you have to have good intentions. You have to have a real reason why you want to start a podcast.
So a bad idea to get in would be like something vain, like, hey, be making like 10 mil in the next 10 years through my podcast.
Well, I only say that because that's probably not going to happen. And you're going to notice that real quick. Oh my gosh, nobody's listening. Well, it's very hard to get it going. You're like, what? I only have 30 listeners. What the hell? Like, that's how it starts off. It starts off with 20 or 30 listeners, and then you got to start building it up. But it takes a while. And if you're just looking at those numbers and you're like, oh my God, this isn't what I thought. I thought I was going to have X amount of, your expectations are going to be you're going to be shattered with disappointment having these expectations. If you think you're getting in this as your profession, it's just probably not going to happen. You have to you can't set, because you're going to quit. If you have the expectation of making money at this, you're going to quit because you're going to get very disappointed and very discouraged early.
Yeah, you have to, there is a little, if that is the case, like there is not instant gratification. Like I have looked at my Anchor analytics and gone, wow, thank you, mom, dad, brother, and sister.
Right.
You guys are great.
Right. Yeah. And you got to be consistent with it. That's the other dirty little secret. You got to be consistent with it. If I'm going to do one once a month, I'm going to do one bi-weekly. You have to do it. Your audience has to trust you, and they have to get comfortable and know that, hey, like my podcast comes out, I say on there most Mondays, because sometimes I take a day off or sometimes a guest skips out on me. So most Mondays, my audience can expect that there's a new episode of Neandertalk. And, it's been 3.5 years, and, for the most, there's quite a few I've missed, but for the most part, my audience can trust that I'm going to have an episode out for them.
You initially said that, you had picked once a week, and that was a hard feat to pull off.
Yeah. I'm still doing it. It's not easy, man. It's not easy.
So how did you come to say, hey, every Monday? Like how did you get to that point, like picking that schedule?
Because that's the start of the week. But for me, because I'm a mailman, I hate my job. But one of the things that gets me through my day is podcasts. And Monday's the longest, worst day, and I want something out. Like I look forward to listening to podcasts on Monday, and so I just use that as like, hey, what would I want? When would I want to listen to podcasts? Is Monday. So I was like, I'm going to throw mine out there. And that way, also when I release it in the morning on Monday, people have all week to listen to it. Like, oh, I don't have, I'll listen to it on Wednesday or something. So it's there all week for people. And I don't know, it just made sense. It's just how it worked out for me.
There's a lot of like scratching your own itch in this, as far as like, hey, I want to go talk to people about this topic. I'm going to go do that. Or I like to listen to things on, say, Monday. I'm going to put it out on Monday. And I think that can be used as a guide a lot of times for, doing whatever, whether it be podcasts or anything else. But I'd say scratching your itch, it plays a big role in kind of any of these decisions.
Yeah, a big part of it for sure. And just kind of what makes sense to me. Like I try to do things that what makes the most sense to me. And I don't know. I think a lot of the things I do make a lot of sense. A lot of things I do don't make sense, but I don't know. Some things, I don't know. That's just, I don't know if it's working or not. It seems like it is, and like I was saying, the dirty secret's consistency. You just gotta, that's the thing. You gotta be consistent to grow.
I mean, it can be really hard.
It's very hard, especially for a person like me. You don't know, man. I have horrible discipline. I have the worst procrastination of anyone you've ever met. It's stupid. I hate it. It's my biggest flaw. I hate that about myself. Both those things. I wish I was more disciplined, and I wish I didn't procrastinate with everything. But it's just, I don't know. It's my flaws. I've got many flaws, but those are my whatever. But for whatever reason, I just have been able to do this one thing consistently for the most part. I don't, it's because I'm passionate about it. It's the reason I got into podcasting in the first place was I needed something to kind of live for outside of when I have my children. Cause I got 2 kids, I'm divorced with 2 kids, and I have them every weekend. But when I don't have them, I needed something to focus on, and just, it was in a dark time in my life when I first started the podcast. And so this just helps me. I don't know. It's fun. I love it. Being the podcaster that I am. It's been an amazing journey. It's been awesome. So glad I've started. And like I say, it is hard doing it consistently, not because I don't like doing the podcast, but I don't like scheduling it. It's hard to schedule. I don't know. It's hard to schedule and get people. And that gives me anxiety. Like I need my schedule booked for like at least 2 months in advance, or else I'm always afraid my podcast is going to end. I'm always afraid it's just going to stop. Yeah. Oh yeah. All the time. I think it's just going to end.
How would it stop? Guess?
I don't know.
Impending
but I
doom?
can't. Yeah. It's just a struggle that I have with myself. I'm afraid that what if I just quit because I can't get a couple guests, or if I almost quit. In January, February, March, I almost quit in March of 2020. And really? Yeah, I was this close to quitting. I think I had 3 guests left on my schedule. I was like, I can't quit now. I have to at least do these 3 people because I've already committed to them. And then I don't know what happened. I just kept going. Like after I was like, I'm just going to keep going. I think there was somebody I wanted to talk to, or somebody wanted to talk to me. I was like, all right. And it just kept, and then I don't know. I just kept going.
How do you pull yourself out of those lulls?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because, they happen, and they can happen late March 2020 when you've been doing it for 2 years. They can happen. Say you publish that first episode and you're like, damn.
Well, when you first start, you're just invigorated. Nothing's stopping you. At least for me, nothing was stopping me all day, every day. I was doing what I could. And now I do get lulls. I don't know how I just do them. I'm a hard worker, man. I'm just a hard worker. And if I commit to something, if I have guests, I can't quit on my guests. Like I can quit on myself all the time, but I can't quit on my guests. So I guess that's why I schedule it for 2 months in a time.
That accountability.
Yeah. I can't let these, I've committed to them. I asked them to come to me. I can't just say, no, I'm done. Like I have to. So
yeah, you got to be there.
And so you just, and then here's the thing. I will get these lulls. I'm like, I just, but then I'll have the guest on and I'm like, this is why I don't quit. This is why I don't do it, because I have so much fun. Like I talk to some of these people, and some of them I'm like, oh, I don't know how this one's gonna be. And then they blow my socks off. I'm like, I love doing this. Like I have so much fun. Like it reinvigorates me. It's like you almost forget about it. Like especially if you take a couple weeks off and you get like in that comfortability of not doing it, not being disciplined, but then you get that guest in and it's just a good time. It's just, that's what keeps coming back is these people. I just have so much fun doing it. It's just so much fun. I laugh so much. I learn so much. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's selfish. It's selfish, really.
The thing is, what I find is when I kind of hit a lull, it usually is, and kind of what you're saying, I enjoy like this conversation we're having, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I spend time looking at WAV files, and I'm editing things, and I'm over here looking at the video and editing that. I'm making like the thumbnail, all right? And then I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like podcasting, right? And I put it out, and then you look at your 4 listens, and you're like, well, that's done.
Was it worth it?
Yeah.
Was it worth it?
And it's really only until, hey, I reached out to Ryan. I send that Instagram message. Hey, we're talking right now. And I'm like, I love this. This.
Right.
But it's that grunt work, and it's you paid on the back end.
Yeah.
That I find can kind of be emotionally taxing.
Yeah. Well, what you're talking about there is being an editor and not a podcaster. And so I'm not an editor. I've been dabbling with it. Like I'm going through that right now. I've started another YouTube channel and where I'm doing like pink drink reviews, like going to different restaurants or bars and reviewing them and just chopping it up. Like it'll take me, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 hours to edit a 3-minute video, 4-minute video.
Yeah.
And then I think my biggest one's got like, I don't know, 75 views. And I'm like, and then the other ones have got like 20, 25, 30. I'm like, it's good content. It really is good. It's entertaining. It's quick. It's just good. And I'm like, am I going to keep doing this for like, I'm not an editor. I'm you know what I mean? And so my trick around that for the podcast is I don't edit anything. It's you come in, you sit down and pretend this is live. I pretend my podcast is live. I go in 3, 2, 1, boom, shalak, boom. Here we go. I got Alan Wayne the Prodigy with me. His new album just came out. It's the demonstration, or actually whatever it is. And we just go, and it's just live. And then that's it. I edit in just my intro video. I edit that in. And then I put my logo and song in. Then I put that. There's this very, very, very little editing. Very, very, very little.
That is definitely a good way to circumvent. I know that, you mentioned like basically keeping it as if you're going live. That's a great way to do that. And that, like you're saying, I mean, like this conversation, like probably just keep by and large, vast majority of it in frame on the episode. And that's saving you however many hours. I know, God, the first episode I put out, I don't know. I spent some insane amount of time editing. I had Audacity up and just beating on my keyboard like I'm playing Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Stayed up to like 2 a.m. on like a Saturday and Sunday. Oh yeah. As a full-time college student playing baseball, I'm over here on my weekend just killing myself. And gosh, there's just like you can spend like hours editing and
for what?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not about that. I'm not about that life. That's just that'll take it out of me. That's just I'm not an editor. I just want a podcast. That's like a whole other thing.
What do you use to edit? What's your software? I think that's something we haven't mentioned for like an equipment.
Okay.
Kind of
that's great. Great question. What do I use? Well, the H6 just goes straight to my computer and creates my file on. What do I use? I'm sorry. No, I do use something. Gosh darn it. Okay. So since I do video, I have you're a gamer. Have you ever heard of what Twitch is?
I am well versed.
Okay. I used to stream on Twitch. Anyways, so that's how I got familiar with this. Is there's a program called OBS. I think it
Okay.
stands for Open Broadcast Software, and it's a free program. And you do that, and then you can hook your all your cameras. I have 4 cameras in my studio, and they are webcams. They're just like cheap but pretty decent quality, like 1080, I don't know, HD,
1080p.
10, yeah, and they're HD whatever webcams, and Logitech. They're probably $80 a piece for those. And those sync up to that program along with all the audio. This was all stuff I had to learn. This is all the stuff I had to teach myself watching all these YouTubes. It's just, but it's a free program, and it's not that difficult to learn. And then I hit record on that. And then when you do that, it just goes straight to a file. When you're done recording, you'll have a video file of it. Or you can also stream it live if you want to YouTube or something. And then that's it. I just record it with Open Broadcast software through my Mac, and then I use that file.
I would say video is something I haven't really incorporated until recently, quote unquote. How important do you think video is in a podcast?
It's not important. I don't think. The only reason why I do have video is because I made a really nice studio. But I made a nice
it.
Well, I only made a nice studio because I wanted my guests to be comfortable. I wanted a nice, comfortable environment to talk to somebody. But then I was like, oh, it is a nice studio, and webcams aren't that expensive. And so I just put them, it was like, like I said, $80 a piece. So I spent a few $100 on those with as much money as I already had invested. I was like, well, why not? And I'll just throw it up on YouTube and see what happens. And so it's hit or miss. It's really hard to get people's attention span on a video podcast. It's just podcasts aren't necessarily meant for video. At least for me, how I ingest podcasting is audio. It's in my headphones when I'm out doing stuff, working out or at work or whatever. It's not too often where I'm sitting in my living room and I throw on YouTube to watch a podcast. It's just, so it's very few, some people like to watch them. But I mean, I have some, it's hit or miss with those. You can have some with like 5,000, 3,000 or 1,000 views. And I've got some that got like 12. And I'm like, why doesn't this 12 one have more? Like this is you guys are missing some gold here. Like, come on. So it can be frustrating that way. And then recently I stopped putting mine on YouTube, and I've started a Patreon. And just because I want people, if people wanted to support me, I've got different options. But if you want access to my video, it's $1 a month on Patreon, and you can have all the video of the new episodes. And it's good. It's good video. I have, the other thing I didn't mention on OBS is you can switch cameras on the fly. And so I have a camera guy come in and he switches them on the fly. He's like a little producer. Like, he just switches cameras, camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, camera 4, and switches them on the fly. So it's good. It keeps you interactive. It keeps going. And so if you go to patreon.com/Neandertalk Podcast, you can get them there. That's it. It's $1 a month. Who can't do that? And you get them a video. And then if you want like $5 a month, I got some extra goodies. I do extra podcasts on there. And then I give you like a magnet. It's just, different levels for different things. But I don't think video is necessarily that important. But if you have a gimmick, you can make it work. There's all kinds of gimmicky podcasts out there that work with video.
Yeah, I mean, at its heart, it isn't a visual format. It's a podcast.
Right. It's like AM radio.
Yeah.
Talk radio for me. I mean, I grew up with talk radio, sports radio, and then the podcast. I was like, this has been my favorite. I don't know. I've just been into this art form, if you will.
You were sounds like a pretty big podcast listener prior to starting the podcast.
Oh yeah. I was like, I went to podcast listening 101. It's like, because I was listening to so many of them for so long, I just felt like I would have been good at it because I've been listening to this stuff forever. Yeah.
Let's go. We say got the guest booked. All right. We got all of our equipment here. What kind of format are we going to follow?
That's whatever you want. Whatever. See that this is a wonderful thing about podcasting. The people out there that are wanting to start a podcast, you have to do what you want. For me, it's long form conversation because I am by nature a very curious fella. One of my tags is I want to either be laughing or learning. And that's like my goal. I want to either be learning something for somebody or just we're chopping it up, laughing our asses off, like having fun. But there's people that love crime podcasts are huge. You know, if you're into crime, do some kind like there's little niche networks out there you can get involved in. The frisbee golf, there's big frisbee golf ones. There's big poker podcasts. If you just have something you're passionate about, maybe you're passionate about baking the best sourdough bread and you're really into like talking to bakers and figuring out I don't know. There's little things out there. If you're interested in, you can start a podcast about it. And the more unique that niche is, the more chances the less competition you're going to have for podcasting in that area. And you might have a bigger chance of blowing up quicker on something. There's a podcast in Kansas City that keeps getting nominated for one of the publications here. It's a comic book podcast.
Really?
And it's not Kansas City centric or anything. I don't think. It's just, they talk about comic books and comics. And that's like one of the bigger, or I guess, voted on podcasts in one of these publications here for whatever that's worth. And it's like, I've never even heard of it. And I checked it out a couple of years ago when they first got nominated. I was like, huh. So like, there's different things out there. Find whatever you're super interested in. I don't know, maybe like chess or dominoes, do a podcast on that. I don't know, whatever. It's whatever you're interested in. Just find that niche that you like.
Well said. Well said. You brought up Anchor earlier. So I use Anchor to kind of distribute my podcast. What do you use, and what are some other options out there for that?
So when I first started, but let's just put it like this way. I had a lot of money invested in the studio, but then I was like, all right, I got to put this out there. And I started looking, there's a thing called Podbean. Okay. Is a distribution app. And then there was another one.
There's Buzzsprout. Buzzsprout's one.
Buzzsprout. And I think there's a couple ones out there where you can just upload your podcast files to it, and then they'll put it on every podcast app out there, iTunes, Spotify, whatever, Apple, all the ones you've never heard of before. And it was like, I don't know, $20 a month or $10 a month or something. I was like, golly, like that was going to hurt me. I don't have a lot of money. I'm divorced and got wrecked financially. Like, I have to give this, another story. I don't know, podcast too. I got to give this chick a lot of money. And so money was tight. And then I found someone who was like, oh, have you ever heard of Anchor? It's a free platform that does all that. I was like, what's the catch? I was like, no, there's no catch. Just do it. And there's no catch. Anchor, I think it's anchor.fm.com.
Yeah, it's anchor.fm. Yeah.
And it's free. It's so simple and easy to set up. And you put your podcast on, you upload your audio file when you want it to drop, what day, what time it drops, and it puts it out there for you for free. It's amazing.
Yeah, I've had really good experience with Anchor, and that was my first exposure. So I'm not really sure what else is out there on that front. And
you don't even need to know. That's my opinion. I don't even need or want to know. This works so perfectly. I just don't understand what the other ones could possibly offer you. I don't know what they offer you that this one doesn't offer for free. Like, if you want to spend money, go spend money. I don't care. Go spend $20 a month on Podbean. Go ahead. You know what I mean? But you're going to get the same thing as I'm paying, whatever, which is nothing.
Yeah. And it's pretty intuitive too. Like, I mean,
if you can figure out how to start a podcast, you can certainly figure out Anchor's app. And the only issues I've ever had with them is just me being like, oh, man, why don't you retweet one of my or reshare or share one of my stories on Instagram? because I hit them and hashtag them all the time, and I see them promoting other ones, and they're not promoting mine, and I don't know. I'm like, all right, I unfollowed them for that reason.
You got a whole silent war going on with Anchor.fm.
Dude, you have no idea how many silent wars I have. You have no idea how many silent wars I have with local podcasters, with Anchor. I got some silent wars with past guests or guests that were supposed, or non-guests that were supposed to be guests. I got some silent wars. That's not healthy. I need help.
You need more meditation. That's what
I do. It's true.
Now, gosh, there are so many hiccups you could succumb to, or not know how to get out of, and you've mentioned several throughout the duration of this episode. What are some other very tough obstacles you faced as a podcaster?
This one is kind of a silly one, but if you work in an environment with a lot of people that you interact with, that you're kind of, your coworker friends, your coworkers, and if they know about it, you're going to get a little, I don't know, mine like to joke around. Oh, we should do a podcast about this. Oh, what are you going to do, a podcast about that? I'm like, dude, I don't even talk about my podcast at work. Very rarely do I mention it. And it's like, I don't know, getting like needled by people sometimes. That can be just annoying. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, hilarious.
Just that nagging a little bit.
Nagging and just like, sometimes a little bit of hate from people, but hate fuels me. Like, I kind of like it. I don't know.
Yeah, Brian, what are you going to do? Make a podcast episode about the water cooler being empty or what? I don't know.
Or come on. Oh, yeah. That's real interesting. No, and I'm like, no, do you think you're interesting enough that I would talk to you? I just work with you. You're a mailman. What do I want to talk to you for?
You're nothing, Sarah.
Yeah. It's like, I mean, I'm a mailman too, but hey, I got a podcast.
Yeah, I'm a special mailman.
No, I'm kidding. I've actually had I've had two of my coworkers on one of the early episodes, but they were, yeah.
What other obstacles are you facing? I know like the learning experience, and you mentioned this earlier, like, yeah, I remember like I recorded my first episode and I'm like, yeah, how do I edit this? Like, yeah, like there's just so much learning that has to go on. I mean, it's not, even if you got all the right stuff, even if you got all the right bells and whistles, you got all the right equipment. I mean, there's so much to learn.
Yeah, those are just the first biggest obstacles you have to jump across. But once you do, it's pretty smooth sailing after that. Jump over those hurdles and it's just a sprint then. So I do interview a lot of hip hop artists,
okay,
local ones, and I will from time to time. More often, I'd like just get these rappers that'll just slide in the DMs. Yo, what do I need to get on the podcast? Put me on your podcast. What's up, bro? I love your stuff. Can I get on the podcast? And you get all that all the time. It's like, it's just these, low level rappers that I don't know, I've never heard of, and which is fine. Kansas City's got over 1,000 rappers, I bet. So it's fine if I never heard of you, but you got to come correct. You can't just yo, let me get on your podcast.
Yeah, it comes back to how you and I reach out to people. You're not just like, hey Ryan, and like, or we like hit you up like that, or like, and then later, can I be on your podcast? Like, be formal, like, have some feel, have some feel, like. Yeah, just be, there's so, and then you get a lot of disingenuous people. Oh yeah, I've been listening to you for a long time. It's like, you just followed me. I can see when you started following me. And so just dealing with like some of that kind of stuff, like clout chasers, or just people that are wanting to promote themselves selfishly, and just some of that was like I wouldn't call them hiccups, but they're just it's kind of annoying. You're gonna have to deal with it. Like, that's just gonna come up.
But it's fine. I mean, it means you're doing something right. If you got people hitting you up like that, they know about you, and they're hip to you one way or another. But I mean, also I like legit people hitting me up going, oh my gosh, I really like your stuff. I would like to come on. I appreciate that. Like, I want people to ask me, but just come correct with it. Don't demand it.
Yeah. At what point within your podcast journey did you kind of see that start to happen? Because I haven't really gotten to that point where I've had people like, hey Dylan, love to be on. Like,
okay, so after that graffiti guy I was telling you about.
Okay.
Oh, shout out to Lucid Flows, by the way. This is his shirt.
It's a tight logo.
That's his shirt that he made. You can see that this Teddy Pendergast or whatever. That mural is down in the crossroads too that he did. And he just put it on the shirt. Anyways, Lucid Flows. When I met him, he was like, him and I hit it off on our first episode, and he was like, hey, I know this chick you might like to have on your podcast. She's a musician, manager type chick, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh yeah, I'd love to. She came on, we hit it off, and she's like, oh, I want you to be part of my group of like artists. Like, we can network together. I'm like, okay. I'm not going to do much of that, but if you want to get people, send them my way, and if I like them, I'll have them on. And then I just kind of got involved with them, with her little group, and just started getting guests that way. What was it? Oh, and so once I started doing that, that's when it first started. Just and what that was her. I didn't realize it at the time, but just kind of using me and using my platform, and it wasn't as
there wasn't as much reciprocity there as you would have liked.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. But yeah, so that it started pretty early, but that's because she saw my platform and how hard I was working, that I was doing it all by myself and like hustling, and she wanted to get a piece of that early on. Mm-hmm. And so that's when that started. And then just the more guests I've had and the bigger guests, it hit social media. So like maybe episode, I don't know, 15 or 20, I started every now and then getting people reaching out to me.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
How much of an impact do referrals play for you?
Depends on who's referring them. Like if it's somebody I trust and they're like, yo, I want to send your information to so-and-so. Is that cool? I'm like, yeah. Uh-huh. But if some people, yeah, referrals are huge if it's from somebody I trust. Like if it's somebody that I'm not cool with and referring somebody, I probably, you gotta trust your source.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I'll have, which is nice, is building a network. The more you do this, the more people you know. Like I said, I've become good friends with some local rappers that I highly respect. And sometimes I'll get some of these rappers that hit me up that they're nicer and they're like, oh, mm-hmm. Hey, I'd love your stuff. Blah, blah. Can I get on your show or whatever? Then I'll hit some of my other guys. I'll be like, yo, who do you know this dude? Because I'll see if they're friends with them. I'll get, yo, what's so-and-so's deal? Like, Is he cool, legit? Like, no, I wouldn't fuck with him. He's this, that, or the other. Or like, yeah, that dude's dope. Get him on. So that's, yeah.
What other vetting do you do? I mean, you got the social aspect. Like, hey, do you know this person? You check out their content as well,
For the most, yeah. Like, yeah, it's people. I'll check out I check out everyone's content first. Well, you know what? That's not true. Early on, when I was desperate, I would take those rappers that would like, yo, let me get on, but like the lower ones, like, oh, I heard about you through so-and-so. Can I get on? And there were a couple where I was just like desperate for content and for guests. Because when you're in the beginning, you're just you'll get anybody and whoever. And so there were some people, not necessarily just artists, rappers or anything,
just in general,
but there were some people I kind of took without really checking their stuff out. And then afterwards I was like, ooh, I do not like their music. So I won't, like, if you listen to my intro. So I do a solo intro before every podcast to let people know what's happening. And if I say, "Oh, I love their rap, I love their music, I love this app, I love their album, go check it out, blah blah blah," I love it.
Yeah.
Oh man, I had this guy on. He was a lot of fun. We had a good time chopping it up. He does music. You can find it here. But we had a good time hanging out. I won't really. You can tell a difference if I like their music or not. Like I'll be pimping it and being like excited about it. Or other times I'm like, oh yeah, he was on. He's had this rapper on, blah blah blah. But you can tell if I don't.
How hard you're pushing it. How big of an advocate. Do we need to edit this part out? Is this a trade secret?
Nope. No, I'll let them know. Now they know.
Let it hang.
Let them know.
That's good. Yeah, there is there's an aspect to like, I don't want to use the term quality control because that sounds like superficial, but like, I think it goes back to kind of what you said, like the whole coworker thing. It's like not just anyone. I'm not just gonna have any person, come on my platform, like or it's not that kind of thing. I don't know how would you kind of how is it for you? I think it's
I'm taking it serious. That's it. You have to come at it with a mindset of just taking it serious and not, and having a certain amount of respect for yourself and for your show at some point. You just have to understand there's also levels and steps, and you have to be okay with some of these steps, but then you gotta level up. You got to constantly level up. And so it's okay to not necessarily get anybody at the beginning if that's the kind of style of podcast you're doing, but you're going to be a little more generous with the invites probably, or stuff like that. But then once you start leveling up, they get better.
Yeah, no, I've seen that firsthand personally, and yeah, it really is. It's like, who do you know at the beginning, and then you really gotta. It's like I always say, like on Craigslist, it's like trying to flip a paperclip into a house.
Oh yeah,
to a certain degree, it's like, all right, I got
one red paperclip.
Yeah, it was something like really just minuscule, just nothing, right? And not to say that's what necessarily happens early on, but it is to a degree. You got to build a base and then kind of leverage that, and you do have to build your credibility in a way. And I know it was so hard early on. Like before I put out like a 4-minute episode 0, which is just kind of me describing, what the podcast is. And until I really put that out, it was just an idea. Like, oh, I'm going to make a podcast. And I had like equipment, and I was still like trying to get a logo and still kind of ironing out like what my format would be. And man, the more like tangible you make things, like, hey, I have a catalog. Now I have X amount of episodes. And someone can it's palatable. Someone could go out and, hey, I can listen to it. It really is. It's just an idea. And that makes it really hard for people that don't know you or don't care about you or whatever, that are more distant from you, to really grasp what it is that you're doing.
Yes. It's about creating a resume. It's a podcast. Look at it as, there's so many different metaphors and analogies you can use for it. I mean, just look at it as like a plant. It starts as a seed and then it starts to grow. That thing grows slow. You can't, it's going to take a while. But once you start growing it, it starts to grow. And then at some point, well, that thing will just explode and get little flowers on it and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I've developed a resume of X amount. I've got 75 episodes. That's a nice number. You can start reaching out to some bigger people probably if you want this. I don't know.
Now,
patience
in your journey, in your podcasting journey, what are some helpful resources that you've come across?
Just YouTube. YouTube. That's probably the best resource. I don't know. You use YouTube. Google and YouTube's your friend to learning how to build your best podcast within your budget. Outside of that, another good resource is other podcasts. Just start listening. If you love crime podcasts and that's all you listen to, step out and listen to a sports podcast. Listen to a long form conversation podcast. Just diversify your listening habits of podcasts and start grasping how other people are doing things. What are their ideas? Just look at how other people are doing it. Like, do a little bit of homework, do some research. You might find out you like movie review podcasts or whatever, just get out there and use those as resources, use other podcasts as resource as to kind of get ideas, maybe even motivation from.
Yeah. Learning from others that do what you want to do. Huge there. And
different perspectives from it too.
That you bring up, like the talking to different genres of podcasting.
Yeah. Just listen to all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that has been useful. I know I've kind of stepped out. I was big on like the JRE and kind of step. I like sports. I played baseball, sports podcasts, lukewarm on, but I will say there is stuff you can pick up from people as far as the, like maybe how they talk or the format. You can always pick up something from someone.
Mm-hmm.
All right, ending remarks on podcasting. Ending remarks here.
Podcasting in general.
Yeah. Your journey. What do you want a new podcaster to know?
Don't do it. Don't do it unless you have to do it. I say don't do it. That's that's how I would end it. It's unless you are passionate and you love it and you want to do it for the art and the love, that's why you do it. Don't do it for any other reason, because it's a hard grind. You're going to get discouraged often. It's just, I would say don't do it unless you have to do it. I have to do it and I love it, but don't do it unless you have to do it.
If you don't have that passion, you won't have the drive for it.
If it's not something, like I said, yeah. And even if you're kind of thinking about it, I would say don't do it.
Really?
Don't do it if you're just thinking about it. You have to want to do it. I talk to so many people all the time. I've been wanting to do it. I want to do it. And then they just never do. And then they start and then they quit after a little bit. It's like, you didn't really want it. You got to want it. Like, it's just hard. I don't know.
You got to want it. No, I think that's with everything. I've experienced that at every point in my life. I think that comes down to it. If you wanted to do it, you would have done it.
Mm-hmm. You might need a kick in the pants, because I needed a kick in the pants and I got that. But I mean, I don't know. I'd say don't do it. It's hard. It's hard. Unless you have to do it, don't do it. There's a million podcasts out there. What do you got to say that's so interesting? Probably nothing. Just listen to Neandertalk Podcast. I got you covered.
Boom. Boom. Well, Ryan, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for coming on. This is the first time I talked to a fellow podcaster. Ever.
They're the best. Yeah, those are the best podcasts. Those are some of the ones I had the most fun with. Because other podcasters know how to do this. It's seamless.
We know what's up.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. I do appreciate you reaching out and wanting me to get on. This was a lot of fun. Like, I'm always out there. I've been promoting for years that I do want to help people with podcasts. Like, if you have questions, hit me up, ask me. Like, I do want to help other podcasters out that are serious and want to do this. Like, I'm all about, if you want me on your podcast, I'll probably come on. If you have questions about it, hit me up. I'll help you. I love helping podcasters.
And just to wrap things up here in a bow, where can people learn more about you and Neandertalk Podcast?
Instagram is great. Neandertalk Pod on Instagram. And then just Neandertalk Podcast. It's on all the platforms. Patreon. I still have like 150 plus episodes on YouTube you can go watch. And then I don't know. That's it. Neandertalk Podcast. Find me. Google me.
In the nighttime, it's the right time to be free. Join me. So while I have you here, let's explore the unknown and throw away our phones and be one with the world.
That wraps up our conversation with Ryan Westa. We talked about how a budget dictates what podcasting equipment you get, ways you can get a podcast logo made, and the importance of having a passion for podcasting. Go ahead and follow Neandertalk Podcast on Instagram and give it a listen on your preferred platform. Check out Jazlyn's music on all platforms and follow her on social media under Jazlyn Epps. And lastly, subscribe to the Simple Questions Podcast to see our latest episodes. Next episode is about a baseball game. but not an ordinary baseball game. It's a game that occurred in the early 1980s between the Royals and the Yankees. I'll leave you with that to figure out. Now, in the meantime, thank you for listening, and remember to keep asking questions.